welcome. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, with David Cooper, and I'm David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, the show where no one's listening, no one cares, the show where I say this exact thing every show. Except this show, I didn't say the exact thing. I said this thing explaining how I say the exact thing, but this is a new thing. It's different than the thing I usually say, which is something I say every time. It's interview mayhem today, so let's jump right into it. At the end of the episode, we will have Tony Five's triumphant return. But before that, someone who does Butt-Tox, butthole HoleTox it's called. He's actually trademarked the phrase HoleTox. We'll find out about everything you wanted to know, and probably lots you didn't, about getting Botox in your third eye. And after that, have you heard of love languages? They're the way you express and receive love from others. They're words of affirmation, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, and acts of service. Well, I'll talk to a psychologist who did the research as to whether these things are real, what they mean. And like most pop psychology, love languages, I don't think are 100% right, but we'll dig more into that. And then here's one thing. Mental health days. I took one yesterday. I was feeling low. I'm not sure I did it right. I just stayed in bed feeling sorry for myself. But adults need mental health days. Do kids need them? Do children need them? Staying home from school? I'm going to interview a psychology professor about just that who thinks they might be a good idea. So without further ado, it's Butt-Tox. Watch this interview be educational. You've all heard of Botox. I certainly have. But have you heard of Botox on your butthole? That is a question that we are about to answer. We have someone here named Chris Bustamante. He has trademarked something called HoleTox. He's a nurse practitioner, owner of Lushful Aesthetics. That's here in Midtown Manhattan. Chris, thank you for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
I am excited to jump in. If only because I have, and I've talked about it on my show, perhaps way too long, a really bad lingering anal fissure. And one cure for anal fissures, allegedly, is getting Botox on your butthole. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can. I used to work in proctology.
Oh my God. So that's your journey towards where you are now. Do you want to tell me about your spa and what inspired you to offer and then trademark HoleTox?
Yeah. So I practice aesthetic medicine. So, most of what I do is facial fillers, Botox. I do lots of sexual enhancement procedures because I also have a background in sexual health urology. So I've really kind of taken all of my experience and compounded it into Lushful Aesthetics. So I used to work in proctology for a proctologist who did surgery. And so that is where I learned about anal Botox. So people sometimes see HoleTox because it's, obviously a very fun, clever name, if I do say so myself. And they think that that is a procedure that I invented. It is not. There are 20 years of literature for the utilization of Botox for chronic anal fissures. There's a lot of evidence on its efficacy and its safety. We know that Botox is a really safe medication. And so for this area, as long as you're utilizing the correct dosage and then the anatomy, you can get really great results to help someone heal a fissure that may be, distressing. Fissures are essentially little cuts and tears that you can experience in the anal area. They can be people are typically more prone to them when they're very tight, or some people hold a lot of stress down there. We don't even realize it that it's a muscle you can clench just like grinding your teeth if you're stressed out. And so some people's anatomy there is a lot tighter and makes them much more prone to tearing. So when you relax that anatomy, you really sort of suppress a lot of that pressure that can inhibit, the formation of hemorrhoids, that can make the skin the muscle more tight, that can make the skin tear. So we used to utilize it both in the OR for patients who are immediately getting surgery. They would also get Botox at the same time so they can heal faster from surgery, because whenever you cut near muscle gets very tight, it gets very angry. And so having that Botox would facilitate the healing process. Now, people loved it so much, and so we continued doing it outpatient as well. And it's a really simple process. In my clinic, we We give someone a little bit of laughing gas after we have a full consultation on it. They get a little bit of laughing gas. Once they're a minute or two into that, I go in with an anoscope. I visualize the internal sphincter. I inject it in 4 spots. I pull out, give it a quick wipe, and I inject the external sphincter in 4 spots as well. The entire procedure takes me about 3 minutes to do. Patients are super comfortable. It takes 2 weeks to kick in, just like any Botox procedure, and it lasts 3 to 4 months. It helps a lot with people who have endured fissures before, or also just want to prevent that from happening in the first place and want an easier bottoming experience. So all around safe, effective treatment that's just really effective.
I love it. Laughing gas, 3 minutes. Do you take your clients out to dinner afterward? Because you should.
No, I definitely don't. But they're very appreciative of it. And I think that people are always pleasantly surprised about how easy the process is. And, everyone always tells me they kind of just wish they knew about this earlier. And I think that it's going to be such a huge treatment in the next couple of years where more providers are going to be trained on it. Because it is such it is a conversation point in the community of anyone who is receiving anal sex, whether you're a gay man, whether you're a woman, or you're a trans person, like everyone, is now exploring anal. I've even had straight men come in who their partners peg them. And those are, fun, interesting stories that they'll tell me. And this is a really great option for them to enjoy their sexual experiences further without having to, worry as much about harming themselves.
So are those the archetypes, the people who come in to enjoy their sexual experiences further? What about people who have IBS, who got fissures from pooping difficulties like me?
Yeah, so I definitely do see people who just are more prone to fissures just from based on extra tight anatomy, or have had incidences of when they were sick and they had like lots of bowel issues, and so they developed a fissure, and we can definitely treat that as well. When it comes to like IBS, like most people are a candidate for anal Botox. The people that I do watch out for though are people who do have IBS who is not well like controlled. Also people in the geriatric population who are losing difficulty with control of their bowel movements. That's pretty much it. As long as you have normal bowel movements at baseline, meaning that you overall just have a good flow with going to the restroom, then you are a candidate. But if you do not have those situations, then I would probably tell someone not to do this. People are always nervous about, the side effect that we always have to mention, which is fecal incontinence. That's when you don't have control over your bowel movements. I've never, ever, ever had a patient experience that before. And my previous employer has never had someone who had that before. It's something we have to talk about because it is just that's medicine. But if you understand how much medication to administer and you understand the anatomy, it shouldn't be a concern for you. The worst case scenario is what I tell people is that when the medication fully kicks in at 2 weeks, when it's at its strongest, meaning you're the most relaxed, I tell them like to avoid food triggers that are just known to kind of give them gas. So if broccoli or dairy or gluten like kind of pisses off your stomach, I would avoid it for a week or two when it first kicks in, because if you are really just prone to, getting a lot of gas, it might be a little bit more challenging for you to hold anal that gas. But other than that, as long as you are not sick and you're not going to have tons of diarrhea, then you are not going to have any problems.
Well, I have tons of diarrhea all the time, but not important. It's not just me that we're trying to learn about. Aesthetic changes. What happens to your sphincter or area afterward, after that 2-week healing period? Are there any aesthetic changes?
No, that's a lot of people will sometimes reach out and they're like, I want to see before and after photos. And I'm like, you clearly didn't read the website. So I'm just like, it's a functional procedure. It's not aesthetic at all. It does not change a single thing. Also, the needles are tiny, 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 tiny. So there really is no recovery from it. I tell patients just to kind of avoid anal sex or anal play for 3 days. That's just really kind of like a little bit of just overkill on my end, but it just being like super cautious, just to kind of let things kind of just settle down. But yeah, there is no aesthetic change. We are literally just trying to relax functional muscles, so that they are still able to work as intended, but with a little bit of a smoother transition.
So I hit on one of these misconceptions you get. Are there any other ones?
I think I answered the two most common ones, where it's like people think that they're going to themselves and people think they're going to come out with a smooth with no lines on it. And I'm just like, no. But other than that, it's just a pretty straightforward, simple procedure that I think that more people should explore who are into receiving anal sex, because I think that there's so many like Reddit pages and their Twitter, lines of people talking about how to make bottoming easier. And people struggle so much sometimes with it, but they identify with being a bottom, but they struggle with the activity of doing so. And I don't think that people realize that there are these other options out there that can really help them with that journey.
I really hope my girlfriend doesn't listen to today's podcast, because she's wanted to peg me, and I'm like, look, I'm into it in theory. If you want to wear a piece, we can just, you'll wear the piece. I'll tell you it's awesome. I'll tell you I want to be pegged. But it's a mess down there. I bleed. I got the fissure. I got diarrhea all the time. I wonder if this treatment could help me.
Yeah, as long as you can manage the diarrhea.
No. I wish that's the secret sauce. All right, good.
That's a lot of investigating to do with your GI to learn more of your food triggers and more deeper allergy testing and autoimmune stuff. But, that's not me giving you medical advice, just conversation.
Just to be clear, and I didn't have you on to tell you about my real fixer-upper down there. Any surprising demographics? You mentioned that, straight identified people come. Any other surprising people who walk in your door?
I would say most of my patients are usually late 20s to mid 40s gay men. But I definitely do have a lot of women also come in for this procedure who are exploring anal sex with their partners, and just have found difficulty doing so. And then, I have a couple of those, interesting cases where straight men are coming in for exploring different aspects of their sex lives, which I think is really cool. And I honestly I think I love the direction that society is going in, with people being able to explore different aspects of their sexuality, and just do so in safe, non-judgmental environments.
I love that direction too. Chris, thank you for chatting with me about this. This was fun.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy we did a little cute educational segment.
I'm happy we did too. Chris Bustamante is the trademarker of HoleTox and the owner of Lushful Aesthetics. That's a Midtown Manhattan med spa. When we come back, we'll go into the actual psychology of what love languages are and whether we should be celebrating them, or whether researchers think there's a better way to look at things. Love languages, what do they mean? Are they something that map to reality in terms of how relationships are structured and how people like giving, expressing, receiving love? That I don't know, but we're about to find out. We're here with Amy Muise, an associate professor in the psychology department at York University in Toronto, where she's the research chair in relationships and sexuality. That was a mouthful. Amy, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I was talking to my girlfriend before we started, and she said my love language was emulsification.
Okay.
I cook a lot of Italian, and I make sure the sauces aren't split, and I also take painstaking effort to mix my cat's food with water. We have to give him extra water so that it's a wonderfully emulsified fish sludge. So she says, I display that for her with the cooking. I display it for the cat. My love language is emulsification. But that's not one of the typical love languages, is it?
No, it's not one of the 5.
So what are the 5 love languages?
So the 5 are, for people who don't know, physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and acts of service.
Which of the 5 is the most strange, the most misunderstood, the hardest to learn?
So this idea of what's harder one. So we wrote this paper recently where we're evaluating whether or not these love languages actually exist. And kind of the key point of our paper is that we don't really think love is a language. So I think when we're thinking about what is the hardest, I think it's actually this bigger idea that relationships, like a good relationship, it takes work and effort to maintain it. So it's not about one of these expressions sort of being hard. It's this idea that, we get a lot of messages in the media that if you kind of find that one perfect partner, or in this case, the partner who's going to speak your love language, then you're going to be happy, you're going to have lasting love. But instead, I think that if you want a good relationship, you're going to have to put the work in, right? So paying attention to your partner's different needs depending on the situation, right? And that these will change over time. And also just, putting the effort in to try to understand each other and, what fulfills each other's needs. So I think it's more that maintaining the relationship is effortful when sometimes, we want it to be simpler or easier.
So you seek to investigate these 5 love languages, which don't have their beginnings in scholarly, rigorous kind of research. No. But can't they be sort of like fun, like astrology? Like I think astrology's BS if you actually do because you can measure astrology. You can come up with testable claims and they're false every time. They're no greater than random chance. But it's just fun for people. Can't this exist in a fun for people kind of zone? Or did you really want to dig in because people are asserting this stuff is true?
Yeah, I mean, it had really become kind of a cultural obsession, right? These love languages are everywhere. There's like daily content on TikTok. If you're into like reality dating shows, you'll see people like talking about their love languages. And so we really did just want to understand if there was any like empirical support for the claims of the love languages. And I think it is. I mean, I think using it in a fun way is probably fine. What we really think Chapman, who is the author, the original developer of these love languages, what we really think he gets wrong is the metaphor, this idea that love is a language, not that doing any of these things are bad for relationships, right? I mean, when you think about what the love languages are, right? Quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, these are all things that we would expect from a romantic partner. So, and there's lots of support in the relationship literature that these are things that are important for maintaining a relationship. It's just this idea of focusing on, having this primary love language that your partner needs to speak to maintain the relationship over time.
Got it. So what did your research find when you went to investigate this stuff?
So essentially, we were trying to evaluate like the three central claims that we would say Chapman makes. And this is a book that he originally published in 1992. And as you said, like it does not have empirical underpinnings. He developed it from his experiences. He was a Southern Baptist pastor and he counseled couples in his congregation. And from those experiences, he developed this idea of the love languages. So his book lays out kind of three central claims. The first one is that people have this primary or preferred love language. So you can take this online quiz that like 30 million people have taken, and it will identify for you like what your sort of primary love language is. But when they ask this quiz, he sort of pits two of the love languages against each other in each item. So, for example, you'd have to choose whether you find like holding hands or receiving gifts to be like a more meaningful expression of love. But when researchers have separated these things and just allowed people to kind of like rate them independently, people find all of these things meaningful. So it essentially sort of debunks, his first claim that we have this primary love language. Instead, it seems like all of these things are important to people, which makes a lot of sense.
So he started with this premise that they're mutually exclusive, and what you're finding is that's not true.
Yeah, he would argue that everybody, not that like the others are not important at all, but that everybody kind of has this primary way that they want to receive love from a partner. And if a partner can speak, to you in your preferred love language, then that's what will sort of lead to lasting love.
Got it. Okay, so that's the first claim. The other two?
So the second claim is this idea of the five, right, which we've already talked about. And when researchers have looked at this, they don't necessarily group together in the ways that, Chapman would suggest, right? So a lot of these things are kind of overlapping, right? Physical touch and words of affirmation, for example, could go together, right? Or, gifts might be part of like spending quality time together or expressing appreciation, so that you couldn't always necessarily distinguish these things. But I think even more importantly, there's things that Chapman misses out on that we know are important for relationships, like from the literature. So, there's nothing about sort of supporting a partner's autonomy or like personal goals outside of the relationship, which we know is important. And there's also nothing about, conflict management, right? In a long-term relationship, conflict or disagreements are going to be inevitable. And we know that, how people approach and manage conflict is important for relationship maintenance. So he does really base his ideas on this pretty specific sample of like married, religious, mixed gendered couples, which might be why, some of these additional things didn't make the cut. But we know that these sort of certainly aren't the only five ways that people express and receive love in relationships.
God, we're shredding this stuff apart. Is there anything else that he got wrong in this book, and where people start to throw these around?
Yeah, so I would say the central claim that he's making, so this third claim, is that people who speak each other's love languages will be happier in their relationships. And there's two ways that researchers have been able to look at this claim. So if people have, his idea is that you most often express love in the way that you like to receive it. So based on that, if two partners in a relationship happen to have the same primary love language, even though we know that's not a thing, in his theory, it would be they have the same primary love language, they should be happier, right? Because they're speaking the love language that the other should want. But even if you don't have the same, you could learn to speak your partner's love language. And so he would say that partners who can do that would also be happier. And researchers have been able to test this, look at all different kinds of combinations. And essentially, they do not support that. People feel more satisfied when their partner expresses love in any of these ways. There was sort of no extra boost to receiving love in line with whatever is identified as your primary love language.
It's really interesting. So if I want to get it right when talking about giving and receiving love, your paper proposes an alternative metaphor, another way to think of it that matches more closely to your research?
Yeah. So because of the popularity of love languages and how much people are into them, we didn't just want to take them away from people. We wanted to sort of try to replace them with something that we think is more accurate. So like I said before, what we think Chapman gets wrong is the metaphor. So we replaced it with this metaphor of a nutritionally balanced diet. So this would suggest that, all of these expressions of love are important. So when you think about a nutritionally balanced diet, you need, multiple ingredients. And of course, you could stay alive on a, somewhat restricted diet, like if you ate mostly carbs. But if you want to be in the best state of health, you would have sort of a balanced diet, like carbs and protein and fat and vitamins and minerals. And so we would think about a relationship like this, right? If the best relationships are probably going to involve partners spending quality time together, expressing appreciation, showing affection, helping and supporting each other, among a lot of other behaviors. So I think the bottom line is we rely on our partners for a lot of things in terms of, companionship, emotional support, intimacy. And, what you need specifically in certain situations is going to change depending. So it's more this idea that it keeps all of these expressions of love on the table and kind of invites partners to pay attention to what your partner might need in that moment.
I love it. I'm imagining Meatloaf singing a gut-wrenching song with this new metaphor, singing something like this. Love is a nutritionally balanced diet.
Catchy.
Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you going over this with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, Amy, thanks again. Amy Muise is an associate professor in the psychology department at York University in Toronto. Mental health days. I feel like in the last 15 years, we as professional adults have acknowledged sometimes we got to take them. But does it make sense for kids to take them, for children to take them? We're going to talk to someone coming up next about just that. Yesterday, I took a mental health day. I'm an adult, though. Should we let kids take them? Not actually an altogether terrible idea. I have someone here to discuss. He is a professor of psychology at University of Toronto. His name is Professor Steve Joordens. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. It's great to be with you.
So when I first saw an article about Mental Health Day for kids, I think I, like a lot of people, scoffed at it. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, kids have it rough. And I particularly had it rough as a kid. A lot of tears, a lot of anxiety. Age helped with some of it. Only some, though. So I guess my first question for you is, when did you first hear about this? Mental health days for kids. What do you think about it?
I've been learning about this initiative myself a little bit. And I think what I would add to it, though, is yes, I like the initiative. I like the idea, but I think there's a previous step that should be in place, which is parents and children learning a little bit more about some of the very basics of mental health and specifically just almost one thing, our biological fight-flight reaction. The reaction that we have that's deep in our biology, every time there's some sort of threat out there, it gets our anxiety up. That is anxiety. And it's a very easy thing to understand. It's like a spider sense. I mean, for kids, it's basically your spider sense is tingling. There's danger, but that it transforms your whole body, makes your heart rate faster, makes your breathing faster. And that's all giving you sort of super strength to face this challenge. But if it happens too long, if it becomes chronic, it's meant to help you with some specific issue that you have. A bully is challenging you or something like that, and it gets you ready for that. But if you have it every day, long term, that's when we get into, serious health issues and the whole notion of just crashing at some point. So what I would like first is for the parents and the children to understand what anxiety is, how it comes about, and to start becoming wise about how they can manage it, because we can all manage it quite well. So, taking a day off is great, but getting control of this is better. And so I would love to see that as part of this story.
As you described those symptoms, started to get flashbacks to my childhood. I was definitely a highly anxious kid, but assuming I'm a parent now, which I'm not and likely will never be, sorry, Mom, yeah. How can I recognize my kid just having a single bad day or these as genuine symptoms that are recurring in my child?
Yeah. In fact, one of the first things I recommend to people when I talk about this is playing a fun game called You're Anxious, which is a weird game because we can see anxiety easier in somebody else than we can in ourselves. When we're actually anxious, our frontal lobes don't work so well. We don't think very rationally. We're much more emotional. And so, if you kind of see that in your child, for example, especially after you've talked about these symptoms and this is what happens, then you can kind of see it in others, and you point to them and say, hey, you're anxious right now. And they'll probably give you the fight reflex, which is say, I am not. And then you go, oh, really? That sounded like a fight reflex response. And if they understand that, they'll go, oh, okay, maybe I am. And then they start. So over time, like I do this with police officers, teach them to recognize anxiety in each other, call it out. And then you begin to know it, because that's the first step to controlling it, is it actually feeling it happening to you. And when you recognize it for what it is, then if you have various strategies at play, you can put those strategies into play. But otherwise, you're just the slave to this reaction. And that's what happens so much is people get really anxious, they get really emotional, they say things they don't mean, and that makes the matters worse sometimes, and it becomes a spiral. So it's all about getting power, getting control over all that reaction.
It's funny you mention one of the first things I learned in my sessions with my psychiatrist way back when was learning the language around my emotions, learning the language around my mood states, learning the language around anxiety. I know it sounds like a silly thing, but I was completely inarticulate when it came to naming these feelings. And that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah. No, that is the common thing. It's such a core part of our nature. I went and talked to a bunch of kids that were 7 to 9 years old. And I said, how many of you guys told your parents at some point that you hate them? And they all sheepishly raised their hands. So they sheepishly raised their hands because they knew that was kind of a mean, nasty thing to do. But then when they started looking around the room and seeing, wait a minute, every kid's done that? Yeah, every kid's done that, because every kid got pushed to some point of being angry at their parents enough so that they use their words to fight. They didn't use their body, but we'll use our words. And that's, I don't love you. That's a really good weapon to have, and yes. Every kid uses it, but they don't realize they're all going through these same things. They're all reacting the same way, and it's not about them. It's about the state they're in at the time. And that's getting that knowledge out there, getting that understanding of that we're really two people. We're the people we are when we're calm and relaxed and thoughtful, and then they're the person we become when we have that threat trigger happen. And when you can start to understand that's a core part of who we are, and I can recognize when that's happening. And then you combine that with some notions of, okay, and I can actually have some control over this. That's when we're getting, I think, more to a mentally healthy kid, but a mental health weaponized kid, a kid that knows how to actually do something about their mental state and in a positive way.
Got it. So back to specifically kids and mental health days. Yep. How do you recommend to parents who have identified in their children a recurrent anxiety that might justify days like this, but also maintaining regular school attendance and not just letting kids take advantage? How do you balance that?
That is the balance, because, as I've described anxiety, which is the dominant kind of feeling, anxiety and depression, I mentioned the fight flight reflex. And so one of the things anxiety provokes you to do is to flee whatever's producing the anxiety. And so if there's things in school that make you uncomfortable or whatever, and so you take the child out of school, yeah, they're going to feel better that day. But then they're going to have to go back to school that next day, and they'll probably be triggered again. So it feels like something to give the child a rest. I would actually recommend other ways to give them a rest, maybe. But I think that's okay. I think of removing them from that stressor for a little bit of time, especially if you feel like they're really, it's really bothering them. But teaching them how to actually deal with that stressor would be better. So it feels a little like it's a good thing to do for now, but if you really want to care about your child's mental health, like the first thing I would say very quickly, think about your child's social health. If your child is having a lot of mental health issues, you're seeing them anxious, you're seeing them depressed, how many good friends do they have? How much time do they spend face to face with those friends? Not on text, not on media, but out walking or playing baseball or talking music or whatever. That social health is the key. It's the foundation of mental health and physical health. And often when we see a child who's struggling, they're struggling alone. They feel isolated. They feel lonely. And if you really want to help that child be able to cope with the stresses, that's what I would suggest is the first stop to make, to try to figure out, how can I do things that will improve this child's social health? And that requires you to know and understand the child a little bit and talk to them and come up with the right ideas, which are child specific. I'll give you one example. I have a granddaughter who is not very social. She's not very comfortable. She loves anime. She went to Comic-Con and she was a social butterfly. She was dressed in her outfit and she wanted pictures of everybody dressed in these other outfits. And that was the thing. And so for her, hey, the more we can get things like that in her life or think about things around anime, if that's the connection point between her and other kids, let's leverage that connection point. And let's try to get her some friends.
It's like an artist who found their medium. She found the anime and a light bulb goes off. Okay, my last question in terms of kids and mental health days, but also for me, because I feel like I waste my mental health days. I just lay in bed and feel sorry for myself. And then the next day I don't feel that much better and I go back to work. Yeah. What are some constructive ways to spend days if we really do feel like we need to take days off ourselves or have our kids take them off because anxiety is getting to them, whatever the reason may be? How do we use this time well?
Yeah. So if we kind of bring these two things together we've been talking about, I would say if we really want to give them a mental health day, make it a real mental health day. And what I mean by that is not just avoiding whatever it is that's causing the anxiety, but also learning about one's own mind, one's own brain, how it reacts to things. So actually, okay, if you want to take the day off that form of school, let's bring you into this form of school. And this form of school is learning about yourself. And there are pretty good courses. You have me feeling I need to create a new one. I created one during the pandemic to try to help people understand the anxiety of pandemic and how to manage it. And that's available on Coursera.org if anybody, it's a free course. And what I talk about there would apply to any other context as well. But I should create one for parents and kids because that would be the optimal answer. Say, okay, you can stay home, but you have to, do a couple modules of this course because that's going to help you when you go back to actually solve the problem and not just escape the problem.
I want to thank you in the liner notes in the introduction to your course, acknowledgements. David, by asking me a question, sparked the idea. I'm taking all the credit. All jokes aside, though, thanks for going over this stuff with me. And I oddly feel better talking to you. I don't know why.
Social connection.
There it is.
We're like friends already. There we go. David, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Anytime, I would come back anytime.
Best friends? I won't push it. Steve Joordens is a professor of psychology at University of Toronto. In moments, nay seconds, it's Tony 5, our British foreign correspondent's return from sea. Tony was on a cruise. He gave us daily logs, but now he's back, and in Tony style, we're going to cover what we normally cover, which is nothing. This should be great. Oh, there he is. Tony, you sounded like shit the last few days. What's going on?
David, no need to start with abject racism. I've been on a cruise, David. I've been at sea. I can tell people now I've been at sea, David. How are you?
Good. Well, I really enjoyed playing your daily updates from the cruise. Did you have fun? How's your mom? Is she alive? Did the authorities get her? Is she addicted to heroin? What's going on?
Oh, did you hear that bit then, yeah?
Yeah.
She didn't really understand that at all, to be fair to her.
This is an interjection I've just edited in. It didn't make sense at all. Like the island, because you're on a cruise where there's lots of islands and islands are called atolls. It didn't make sense at all on a boat. It's hilarious. Now back to the interview. This will all make sense later. Tony was talking about how great the cruise was.
It was amazing, mate. International waters is just phenomenal. I was under the complete misconception that these things were for old people, shuffleboard, fat Americans, people waiting to die, and bingo. Now, apart from the fat Americans...
You were under that misconception, and now you are of the conception.
Correct. It was phenomenal, David. There was so much to do, so much food, so much entertainment. You name it. You wake up at a different port all the time. You've got a balcony. You can hear the waves of the sea. I needed it. I loved it, and I will do it again. So, David, you can just call me now Master Seaman.
Master Seaman, cruise director, funeral director.
Correct. There were so many homosexual people on board. There were so many Filipinos. It was like a sort of weird circle that they both cover each other as well, which was quite nice. Fat Americans, angry people, loads of Karens, Australians, some Brits who were slightly confused. There was one Canadian I met.
Do you make friends on these boats? I haven't been on one since I was 19, so it's been about 20 years.
Mate, I've made loads of friends, like literally loads of friends. It was just incredible. It was just incredible. Yeah.
Okay, like are these just cruise friends that you talk to on the boat and you'll never talk to again, or did you make new besties?
I know people I hope you're going to have sexual with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you get busy on the boat, or were you sharing a room with your mother?
I was sharing a room with my mum. That would be really awkward. But yeah, it was just. No, honestly, mate, it was epic. It is I can't tell you how good it was. It was just amazing. It was just amazing. Yeah.
What's going on your phone, Tony?
I'm just looking at porn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
I mean, you're not that interesting, to be fair. How many fingers am I holding up?
I don't know. None?
4?
Yeah, but you weren't holding
All right,
it.
let's do it again. How many fingers am I holding up?
4.
2.
Oh.
This is a great game. Let's play it one more time. How many fingers am I holding up?
You've been gone for like 100 weeks, and all you can talk about is the cruise for 1 minute and how many fingers are you holding up, and you're on your phone. I'm glad to have you back.
How many fingers am I holding up?
1.
3.
Thought you were going to give me the middle finger. That would have been...
So how have you been, David?
I've been good. Yeah, I had a nice trip to Canada. I had a nice Passover. You were missed. We wanted you there, but...
I know. I was reading about Passover. I thought there was something to do with sacrifice, so I didn't bother coming. But
no,
it's all good.
Well, sacrificing bread if you observe, but I don't observe, so no.
Okay. No, mate, I had the wonderful time. It was amazing. I went, 11 ports, obviously you heard, as I said it, I started off in Rome and then ended up down in Barcelona. And we stopped. I didn't get seasick. My mum did. One of the nights was very shaky. You were like shaking from one side to the other.
Your mom's sitting in the bathroom throwing up? Like, what's going on?
No, she just felt very uneasy. There were loads of people that were throwing up.
Nice.
It was just, I mean, to be fair, it was just like I would drive. So it wasn't really that bad for me when I'm sort of spinning around in London. But
that's too bad. Vomiting is so erotic.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know. It was just amazing. There were some ginger people on board. They let some of them in. I met a lovely Jewish guy. He just told them, I don't know why, he kept telling everybody he was Jewish.
Yeah, that's what we do.
But why? I didn't get that. He didn't, when I say look Jewish, I didn't see he had a look of Jewish. He goes, oh, hi, my name's Don, and I work in New York. And I was like, right. And he goes, I'd come here, just, I'd bring my family. And I took him out of school. Well, because I'm Jewish. And I'm thinking, how did that relate? The fact that he took his kids out of school.
And why is being Jewish something to justify going on a cruise?
Correct. And I couldn't work it out. And he left me confused. On the last day I was coming, now you know that without my glasses I can't really see, right? I'm blind as So for 10 minutes I was shouting at my mum, get ready, come on, we need to go, blah, 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 blah. And then someone tapped me on my shoulder. It was my mum. So I've been shouting at a little Chinese woman who just happened to be wearing similar, very coloured clothing to my mum.
Okay, and she was happy to have you shout at her?
So confused.
Yeah.
She was so confused. Japanese people followed me everywhere, which was kind of fun.
I love playing name the ethnicity of people and then say one sentence about them game. It's a fantastic...
Like what?
It's what you're doing.
Am I?
How was the food, Tony?
Just bountiful, David. And that's probably the first time I've ever used that word. It was bountiful, my friend.
All-inclusive buffet, as you call it?
All-inclusive babushka.
But is it any good? Like, how are they controlling the quality when they have heaps of food?
Yes, it's good. It's fresh. It's everywhere. They sanitize everything. So the little Filipino people, as you walk into the cafeteria, go, washi, washi, and they sing a song. It's beautiful.
That sounds beautiful.
It's a washi, washi.
Gambling? Did you gamble on the boat?
Yeah, I gambled on the boat. Yeah.
Would you win, lose?
No, I sort of squared up. I was fine. I maybe gambled about $50, but yeah, it was all right.
Think about jumping off the edge. That's my worry, right? There's just those rails that you could just jump and be dead, you know?
Oh, yeah, and die. Yeah, and then no one will ever see you again. I did twice, but that was only when I didn't get any phone reception. But yeah, I really needed it, number one. Number two, it was amazing. Number three, I will do it again.
And now you've got full COVID, I can tell in your voice.
Do you think I've got COVID? I'm a bit worried because I've got this cough.
Why don't you just buy a test? How much are they? 10 pounds? Like, get a test.
I don't know. I should I think I've got one somewhere. I will try it. You're right. Yeah, I should test myself. It's just got a bad throat. But I've been working. Since I got back, I was working straight away. Oh, I got news.
Those boats are cesspools, though, before we get into your news. They're just petri dishes of disease.
They are. And to be honest with you, in all seriousness, there was a cough going around. Then there was like a bit of a sickness going around. And it does go everywhere. You cannot get away from it. Even as much as these guys clean constantly and sanitize everywhere, you can't avoid it. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's in the air. I mean, you're wiping down a surface, but the particles are in the air.
Get you, f***ing epidemiologist. Jesus. So, you know what I mean? F***ing talk to Dan Riskin once or twice. And look at you, f***ing Professor David, eh?
There you have it. Okay, the news, Tony. You had news.
Oh, I'm selling my little car.
What's your little car? You've got a little...
I had a little red car, my little Dubry, and I'm selling her. I'm getting a bigger car.
That's your news?
Yeah, what else do you want? F***ing, what do you want?
But you've been away, and you're like half paying attention to this interview, and then your big build-up to news is you're selling a car? I don't care.
Listen, the listeners have gotten used to this abject banality, and that... So the fact that they've got me doing it live means that they're on a bonus. Yeah. So yeah. I don't know what you're expecting, but manage their expectations, David, please.
I guess I was expecting more. You were so animated in your daily updates, only to have you in person, and you're just, you know.
Do you think that's because I was a man of the sea? Do you think now I'm a landlubber and I'm not as exciting? Maybe that's it. Maybe the secret of my success is that I belong in the sea.
Yeah.
Maybe I should belong in a boat. I'll think about buying a boat at some stage. I do love boats. I can't sail. I know there were swimming pools on the boats. There were spas, casinos, clubs, hot tubs.
You do a schwitz? You do a sweat in the sauna?
I did a sweat in the sauna. It was brilliant. You said you went on it well. Do you know what? One of our avid listeners called me up on something that you said that I didn't believe you'd said in one of the live recordings we'd done before I went.
What did I say?
So you had said, we were talking about something about wealth. And I said, I can't afford this. And you go, well, I can, but I hate my money.
Yeah.
Did you say that?
Yeah, I say that. Is it because I live in New York? You have to hate your money to live in New York because you just spend so much of it.
Right, but the way you said it, she had texted me going, did he really say he hates his own money? And I was like, I think he did. And we had this whole conversation about how rich you could possibly be to say you hate money.
No, it's just an expression. Like if you buy a $10 coffee instead of a $2 or $3 coffee every day, you would say, I buy that $10 coffee every day because I hate my money.
Oh, I took it as you were like fucking Scrooge McDuck swimming in dollar bills. And you were like, I hate my money, you pauper.
Well, I mean, I was before I moved to New York. Every day that goes by, less so.
Yeah, you're getting less and less.
It's just a saying. Maybe I made it up or maybe I heard of it.
Oh, we've never heard of that expression. So she's Canadian and she'd never heard of that expression. So I started off with, maybe that's just something they say. She goes, no, I've never heard of that.
When you feel stupid about wasting money, you say, I wasted my money on this new tennis racket because I hate my money. It's just a thing you say.
Oh, as in I hate my money, so I'm just abusing it.
Yeah, I hate it so much that I'm going to abuse it. Yeah, you know.
Now I get it. No, I thought you were like, oh my God, I've got so much money. I hate my money.
No, it's the opposite. You can't bear to save it because you hate it.
Oh, yeah, Americans don't do sarcasm.
It's a roundabout idiom for saying you waste your money on a specific thing.
Oh, no, I didn't get that.
What was the topic where I said it? I forget.
I can't remember. It wasn't anything interesting. Just so anybody that's listening, don't bother going back. It's not worth that. But it was just something that you said that made me laugh.
Tony, this may have been the best 10 minutes I've ever recorded with you.
Right? I know, right? Are you happy? But did you miss me?
I did.
Did the listeners miss me? So just to let you know, one of the callers, I can't remember his name, but he did ask for a postcard and it is off now. Whoever it was, what was his name? Mr. Merengue? Maruth? Mr. Garth? Mr. And you said, oh my God, it's this guy. And the it is, he's a greedy because he wanted 2. He's already got one. He wants another one to add to the collection. What was his name?
His name was, well, there's Gerald.
Ah, there you go. I knew it sounded like a Thundercat or some sort of Transformer. So, Mr. Your postcard is en route. Okay, baby?
Love it. Tony, thank you so much.
David, it's been a pleasure. I can't say I didn't miss you because I didn't. And I can't say I haven't missed doing this recordings because I didn't. But I did, and I do. And my mum wanted me to clarify to you that she is not a drug abuser.
Got it. You said something to do with your mom, and you're like, so-and-so atoll. And then I was going to say atoll, like a group of islands. I had this whole joke lined up, and then you kept talking, so I didn't get to deliver it. That was at the beginning of the interview.
Okay, well, maybe edit that in later to make somebody laugh.
I might do. Tony, thank you so much.
Love you, David. Love you, listeners. Love you all.
There he goes. Now the atoll joke makes sense. Thanks for being here, Tony. Thank you for listening, listener singular intended. I'll be back tomorrow with more. This is going well, I think.